Okay, so good afternoon, everybody, or good morning. I know we have some international listeners as well. Welcome to today's webinar. My name's Greg Taylor, and I'll be your host for today. It'll be an interactive session. We've got some discussion points throughout, but please feel free to send any thoughts or questions or chats you have through to the presentation group, through the GoToWebinar panel that you'll find in the right-hand side of your screen. The session is going to last roughly 45 minutes or so. We'll have time for questions at the end, but as I say, we've got time for questions throughout, and I'll try and sort of stage manage and bring those to the fore in a timely manner. Today's topic, we're going to be exploring how your practice can utilize technology to unlock the value in data, which in turn drives a step change in audit quality and effectiveness. Now, quite a hot topic given recent publications and recommendations, certainly here in the UK from leading figures. So I hope you find it a useful and interesting session. I'm delighted to be joined by two of my colleagues who have swathes of experience in helping accounting practices manage their digital transformation and implement stronger data strategies. Jeff Gramlich, who's joining us from the States, New York, I believe, today, brings a wealth of experience and an extensive career as a CPA. Hi, Jeff.
Hi, James. Welcome, everyone.
Right, we're also joined by my colleague James, who spends his days working with the UK's most progressive accounting firms, helping guide their strategy and decisions, certainly around data. So, James, welcome.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Morning, everyone.
Good stuff. So let's take a little look at the agenda for today. First, we'll spend some time setting the scene and thinking about how we find the accounting market as we enter 2020. We'll then explore how technology can support your data strategy, especially in lieu of recent recommendations from Sir Donald Brydon and John Kingman and CMA, amongst others. And there are some particularly fascinating recommendations that we're going to try our best to sort of bring out and start that discussion and certainly hope to tangibly link to audit quality. But as I said, if you'd like to contribute, then please, use the webinar platform to join in. But I'll now hand over to my colleague James, who's going to kick us off. Everybody have a great session.
Lovely, thanks very much, Greg, and welcome to everyone, and thank you all for joining. So before we get into the meat of this, I think it's important for us to take a moment to remember how we got here. And why things are changing at the rate they are. What we've seen is unprecedented levels of failures of UK businesses that are very much in the public eye due to financial issues or potentially fraud. For example, big black holes at Patisserie Valerie. And several others. Obviously, I'm sure very familiar with lots of them. And in all these cases, we had audits signed off, relatively recently before the collapse. And we also saw that all of the big four missed quality targets in 2019. The target from the FRC being 90% of audits rated as good quality. So a lot of pressure on auditors to improve the quality of their audits, and I guess particular interest in the likes of Patisserie, Valerie, and Carillion, where we saw implication of fraudulent activities within the business, and the argument of auditors not their job to perhaps look for fraud within the audit. And we saw from Brydon, and I think this is sort of getting us onto the subject in hand, that we now see, I think it was recommendation 14.1.5, I believe, around the obligation of an auditor to endeavour to detect material fraud in all reasonable ways. And I think historically, one could argue that the methodology that was in place was perfectly reasonable to detect fraud. Now, with the advent of technology such as Validus, that can look at full population testing of transactions and compare that against third-party evidence at volume and at speed, is a very reasonable way to expect an auditor to endeavour to detect material fraud. So I think that's a big change. And also, similarly, in 14.2.2, that company directors should report on the actions they've taken to fulfill their obligations to prevent and detect material fraud. So pressure coming perhaps to the auditors from the directors to ensure that the right processes and technologies are in place to protect them as well. So certainly very interesting times and very much uncharted waters. So the role of the modern auditor is certainly changing. And then, you know, a brief run through some of the events we know have happened. We've seen CMA recommendations to look at possible splits of Big Four audit work, you know, focus on producing challenging and objective audits, joint audits potentially, holding audit committees more vigorously to account. And then we saw Kingsman looking to replace FRC with ARGA and give it more teeth and a greater ability to do its job. And you know, and I think we're necessarily more feared by those who it regulates. And then obviously where we're going to spend most of our time today focusing on Sir Donald Brydon's report, you know, specifically around the redefinition of audit and its purpose, the establishment of a new audit profession, measures around fraud, opportunities for companies to demonstrate their approach to resilience and assurance, an enhanced role for shareholders and other stakeholders in audit, and an increased use of technology and far greater transparency and communication within the audit process. I mean, huge changes, and this is where we'll focus the discussions today.
Great, thanks, James. So I guess what we're going to do, as I said at the start, is pose some questions throughout, and feel free to, as I say, chip in with your thoughts for the day. So the first one today is, you know, given all of the recommendations and reviews that happened in 2019 and slightly earlier, you know, which ones will have the biggest impact over the next 5 years, James?
Oh, it's a really good question, and there's going to be such change. But I think a couple that stand out to me is the sort of professional certification and the professionalization of the audit profession, and the new certificates, training, and scrutiny that will come with that. I think will change things hugely, as well as the formation of a new regulatory body, the additional levels of scrutiny that will put on auditors, on their processes, and on their technology will change everything. And I think those are the two areas I think that will have huge impact over the next 5 years. Jeff, well, what do you think?
You know, I agree with what you're saying there, James. I think there's a couple other things that as auditors we have struggled with for a long time, and those kind of end up in the 6.8 section of the recommendations if you're following along from some of the Brydon review, and that's around the public interest and how do we change that perception. You know, if we sign our names and our firm, or we sign our firm's name to a statement, you know, the public has for a long time seemingly thought that was that we looked at every single thing that could possibly go wrong in an audit, or analyzed every single number of a financial statement, and that's never been reality. So I think, you know, using technologies to look at every transaction and understanding the data around that, I think we can, you know, maybe start to change the public's perception and get a little more specific in what we've done, and you know, a little more analytical and holistic in our approach versus our traditional procedures that we've always followed in the past.
Great stuff. Thank you, Jeff. So now we're going to hand you know, back on to James. James is going to take us into how we look at harnessing technology in order to unlock the value of data.
Brilliant. Thanks, thanks, Greg. So I think what's very fair to say is that accountancy lags very much behind other industries when it comes to harnessing data. Retailers, financial services, for example, have long identified data as a key differentiator and a competitive advantage creator. Tailoring, you know, they very much tailor products and services for individual clients using data, whereas accountants, we feel, have a much more transactional relationship with data. And I think, Brydon reported on this and made recommendations around implementing technology. I think it's 24.1.8 to use data from the companies they audit in order to promote better quality audits. And I think that's key. And Jeff, I'm sure you've got things to say on this as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think as we look through this, and we really start to analyze what they're saying in the report and what technologies are out there, you have to now start to look at your own internal procedures and steps to not only drive a higher quality audit, but to drive efficiencies as well, right? So they're not asking that audit fees go way up, although that may be part of it. They're not asking that you spend a ton more of fees or infrastructure on it. What they are asking is that you start to utilize technologies that make for a better opinion at the end of the day, and harnessing this data through technology is a big key to that, and starting to move away from some procedures that we've just kind of done for the last 80 plus years here in the States, and even longer in other parts of the world. So I think we start to look at transaction sets and some other things that we've never been able to do manually in the past that we can do now with just our fingertips and have our clients help us. So, as we harness this data, what data do we need, and how do we get this data, and what can we do with the data? One of the things you have to think about when you're starting to deal with your broad set of clients is, to drive quality, you have to have a degree of efficiency, and to drive efficiency, you have to have a degree of standardization. And you guys have done that in a lot of ways throughout your practice, but a lot of those processes have been manually historically. I used to carry an audit bag, and our technology was a copy machine. We copied paper, we gave it back, and then we started our spreading. In the States, we would call it tick and tying, and making sure everything was analyzed. That was a very limiting approach, because we would do some sampling and we just couldn't look at data any deeper than that, and a huge drain on resource and very time consuming. Well, that manual process has just been automated into Excel, and that's kind of where the automation has stopped. And there are some great third-party tools that you can run against for general ledger testing and things like that. But we're talking about going much deeper than that, and really having at our abilities with our clients to show them what we can do for them, and start to look at and have routines that analyze every single transaction, and really change the way we have done this in the past. Yeah, so when we look through and just ask this question, there is a ton of time that is lost on manual processes and just manipulation of the data and collection of the data. I was on with one of the global firms not long ago, and they were telling me that they've been able to improve some of their processes by as much as 30-40% just by implementing some of the newer technologies on the market. And the way they've done that is they've reduced the number of second and third requests back to their clients after they sent out the initial PBC list. And I know, James, you've had some similar experiences. You want to talk on some of the things?
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. So we've seen reports coming back from clients seeing up to 80% of time saving on revenue verification specifically. So very, very large increases in time saving, and much of that does depend on, as I think you alluded to there, Jeff, the sophistication of the current processes. So for organizations that are have optimized their manual processes to a degree, then perhaps the time saving isn't quite as big, but even in those scenarios, we're still seeing 30-40% of time savings. So really quite striking, not only improving audit quality, but big increases in time saving, which is important. And really, a lot of organizations that I speak to, especially in the Big Four, have so many initiatives now around trying to keep professionals' time focused on what they're there to do and where they add value, and reduce the burden of administration. And I think it helps align to that as well.
Perfect. So if we think through it now, and when we dig into the report deeper, and we see there is a direct call out, as you can see in this quote and in the section there, that it's an obligation of the auditor to endeavor to detect material fraud in all reasonable ways. Now, we've had fraud detection tests for years and procedures around fraud, but I think what the Brydon report is really driving at is this particular point, and straight on it. They really want to make this point that you need to go even deeper and broader in detecting fraud and understanding what all can go on. Well, one way to do that, it's not the only way, but one way to do that is to have a better way and handle of the data itself, and what does the data tell us, right? And what can we do with this data? So as I look through these different sections and then match this up to what we're trying to add, we see a couple things. We see the ability of the software to look at every transaction at a granular level, and we've got a few diagrams here in a minute that will show that. We have software that will allow you to provide third-party evidence, such as bank statements, and we will analyze every bit of those bank statements against the entire GL transaction set, as well as the subledgers, AR and AP subledgers, to show you exactly what's going on and what's cleared. We will trace that out to deferred accounts and what we call endpoints, and trace the balances out to any non-cash accounts. So if you think at the top level, if it hasn't cleared in cash, in or out, and it has not, it's not in a deferred account or a non-cash account, then that should be a strong area of focus for us. So we believe that this creates a very robust and rich risk map for the auditor, and narrows down really where he should focus his efforts on and drill deeper into the audit. And it is because of this technology that you can now look at every transaction, where heretofore you've never had that ability and would even consider it. Your sampling of 3 to 5% is really all that you could do in the past. So when we take a look and just try to analyze, okay, how do we do this and deliver this in a reasonable fashion? So the first thing you think about with data, you have data coming from a lot of different clients, from a lot of different GL packages, ERP systems, et cetera. The first thing that has to happen is a seamless way to digitize that data and standardize that data, right? And so that's where it all starts. It's hard to do any broad-based improvements in quality without improving efficiency, that I said earlier, and efficiency starts with a fair degree of standardization. So that's the first step in this. And so when we collect this data, we are mapping to a standardized chart of accounts, regardless of which package that your client is using. So once that data is standardized, it now becomes actionable. And it's through this process that literally takes anywhere from minutes to an hour or two on an incredibly large and sophisticated data set. But this is where it becomes the first and most critical step, because now we have the ability to do things with standardized data. This method is also a simplified way of collecting the data. So we take your PBC list and we compare it against what you're going to get back from this standardized data methodology and software extraction. And it is through this process where we show you where you can eliminate several of the PBC questions. We can't, not every question is directly financial and numerically related, but we can take out a significant number of those PBC questions. From our clients that have used the software for a couple years now, they are telling us that their clients, so your end client is seeing a nice reward, in the sense that the auditor is not always asking for second and third requests for information, because when we pull the data, we pull all the data, not just the current year, but the prior years as well, and we pull all the subledger data. So there are a lot of other tools out there that do some extraction, but not to this level of granularity. And it is through that process that we've been able to eliminate a lot of back and forth with the client, and we're grabbing that data. And then kind of after we've simplified that evidence collection, that allows us to look at all of the transaction sets that I just mentioned. And we'll show you an output of that here in just a few more slides, and then take your questions. But that is giving us the ability to now run our algorithms that have had thousands of uploads and data sets run against it, to give you an exact match of what's going on in these accounts. And there's, one of the high standards of evidence is that which is third-party evidence that can be independently verified from what the client and the management accounts are telling you. And it is through that we are automating that financial verification process in these bank documents. And we will take PDF statements we read from open banking standards to get a more granular view, and certainly reduce your firm's risk of what's going on. So let's take a look at this question. How challenging will it be for UK auditors to become fraud detectors, right? So James, you want to jump in on that one first?
I think it's a really good question. And I think here it's really wise to look back and look at how we saw this in financial services, and we saw legislation over the years which showed that a lot of financial services regulated organisations had to have a larger burden of fraud detection placed on them, which wasn't naturally what they were traditionally doing. And they turned quite quickly to technology to help with this very effectively, to help look for unusual transactions, etc. And I think it's very, very hard to start looking for fraud without technology. So I think without huge changes in process and investment in technology, it will be very challenging for accountants to become fraud detectors.
Yeah, and I think that's right, James. As I look through it, and in a session I gave just this past week here in the States, I got asked, well, what skill sets should we be looking for in addition to just the the accounting students that we're recruiting today, and the young people that come in to help us do this. And we had kind of a roundtable discussion on that, and kind of came up with, we don't need to all hire a bunch of data scientists, although auditors tend to not understand data like a data scientist would, and that's obvious. But really, it's also people that have a good business knowledge of any particular vertical that you're in. So here in the States, a big vertical is obviously healthcare. And when you hire, and some firms are starting to hire accounting majors that have other degrees and other experiences, in a particular vertical, such as healthcare. So they have an understanding of what's going on in that client's business, to help understand the relationships of that data that you're just trying to understand and detect some fraud and some other anomalies that may be going on in that data. So I think the keys to that, is we're talking about a significant change, and this does not and will not occur, instantly. It needs to occur over time. All of our clients have started small, but the early adopters have already started on this. They evaluate their processes. They've got 2 or 3 tracks going on, how they're going to change their internal audit procedures and get through their internal risk and compliance processes and peer review processes. But they start the process, and they don't stop. So they continue to evaluate the technology, as James just mentioned. They continue to look internally at other ways in which we can do it. They then bleed that back down into their recruiting and their talent needs, and they lay out a multi-year plan, right? Because if you just think of our busy cycles, which we're in now, and we will be in that for the next 4 or 5 months, any given calendar year really boils down to just a few key months in which you have time to really evaluate technologies and look to implement things and get people trained up on them before you're ready for the next cycle. So by definition, it's going to take a few years for firms to move through this process. So our strongest suggestion is that you start small, and that you start now, and you you lay out a multi-year look at this and don't try to do it all at one time. So I mentioned earlier, and I'm just coming back to it. So how exactly does this technology work, and how does our software work? So we have a product called Data Share that we private label. So everything that I say about Data Share would be your firm's name. We private label it behind the scenes, and we allow you within the software to send your client an email invitation and ask them to, submit their data through a link. And so they just accept this link. They create a password. They tell us which GL package they're using, and basically we take it from there. We do not install anything on your machine or the client's machine. This is all cloud-based technology, and the reception, we help you with the email of what to tell your client and how to say it. But this is a very key step, is getting your client to buy in. We have seen well over 99%, so we're to greater than 99% acceptance of client invites from your CPA to upload data this way. And we also ask, obviously, as part of this process, the bank statements. And so one of the best practices that we've seen is that you ask for 15 months of bank statements versus just quarterly or maybe year-end bank statements that you might be doing today. And the reason for that is so that we can verify post-close adjustments and see what transactions are cleared, and again improve our quality beyond just the calendar period in which we're auditing. So that key piece is right up front, is getting that data submission. As I mentioned earlier, we then standardize the data, as you know, and we with that standardization becomes our first step in becoming more efficient. And that is key, because if we want to do anything with this data, manipulate it and improve quality, we have to get more efficient, and that starts by standardizing. It is also in the standardization that we can now compare it and use other tools such as the bank activity data, once we have extracted that, to verify the transaction sets, and now look at this most granular level of detail that we have shown across the globe, and has been a very unique step in what we're doing, and has received a lot of strong accolades in what it's doing. Basically, it's going to show you that we have looked at every transaction, so that's 100% of the P&L analysis. Obviously, that's giving you at least 20 times more than the 3 to 5% coverage you've done when you're sampling, and can save you up to 80% less time. We are taking a big part of your revenue verification steps out, and we're automating it. And again, all we have done in this process up to this point is we've sent the client an email invitation and just asked them to kind of submit their data, and we've taken their bank data and we submitted that. And then now we have run our routines against this. So this is all in the cloud, all software, and it standardizes the data to fit for purpose. So one way to think about this is if you were building a database for an auditor for audit purposes, this is what you would want it to look like, so that you can do other things with that data and perform other analysis on top of it. And we have seen with several firms that the use of technology in some of these areas where you've had to do it manually is a key differentiator in recruiting and retaining talent. Young people don't go to college and sit for their appropriate exam and write for the exam, just to get out and then do manual work and tick and tie type things that we have traditionally done, and I myself learned as well. They want to see firms that are using technology to where they can get better at their job and understand how they add value in a more meaningful way, and that's around analysis of the numbers, not just doing these basic steps that you have to do in every audit. So if I look through this slide, and this is one of the outputs of what's going on here, and if you can see the columns in green there in the middle. We'll just go through that here just for a few minutes. So what you see here is a typical match rate of 80 to 95% at a given point in time of the match rates, right? We tend to have inflows and outflows. Think of that as revenue and expense, right? So we see this for in this particular case for a period of 12, 13 months of bank statements, and you can see each month there what the inflows were and what the outflows were. This is a dramatic improvement. And right behind this report are additional reports. This is just an Excel extract, by the way, and there's numerous tabs. There's one for revenue, and there's expense, there's deferred, there's subsequent events, all in the software. There's about 15 different tabs within this Excel file that we're creating that give you not only a summation, but the exact detail in which accounts are still outstanding. So now if you've done this in advance, you can have a completely different conversation with your client and go out and say, you know, this account is still outstanding, and you're asking very specific questions about very specific accounts at a very specific point in time. And where is this transaction? What happened here? Why did this not clear? Was there a partial pay on this? You know, why is this way beyond your standard or your norm? But it's going to create that auditor risk map. And this is just the top level. Each one of these items can be actionable and clicked on and to verify all the way down to the actual debit and credit that created the amount. We will take for those businesses that have a lot of summary entries. I think of summary entries that I think of businesses that are typically open on the weekend, and there may not be a GL entry until later that week. We will break apart through our algorithms those deposits that are batch deposits. We will match up the batch deposits to the detailed transactions, and we will analyze it again all the way down to that lowest level of granularity in the transaction that created it. It is because we have run this through literally thousands of data sets that our technology can give us this type of output and this type of answer set. It's because it continues to learn and it continues to get improved with more data sets, you know, and so I call it audit intelligence, not artificial intelligence, but it's really audit intelligence. So that's the way I think of AI, is how do I make the auditor better at what they're doing? And in my mind, I want to eliminate remedial tasks. At the very end, I want to standardize some data, and I want to give you an output set that gives you the risk map and the roadmap of what to go look for and what questions to ask. I don't want to make assessments about management accounts. I don't want to make assessments about you know, relationships between the data, other than what I can actually compare and verify with third-party evidence.
Great, thank you, Jeff. Yeah, we've got a few questions coming in, but thanks for that. That was fascinating just to see the link there between some of the pressure and regulation that's been advised and sort of the take forward in terms of adopting technology in the future that will help you know, clients with the effective audit quality. So yeah, so the first question is where is this being used in anger? So straight to the point. So yeah, Jeff, back to you, Jeff. Do you want to talk about a sort of effective rollout of verification?
Yeah, absolutely. So we started this journey about 18 months ago, close to 20 months ago now, and we showed it to some of our largest and some of the largest firms in the world, the global firms, the big four, and they all had initiatives around this area. And in taking that to them and seeing it, they were on it immediately. They didn't have anything that was doing this type of verification and this type of sophistication and algorithms that they had internally, and they have helped us tremendously in kind of working through that. And then we've seen the largest firms, which is our focus here in the States. We call it the top 200 firms. We've had you know, several of them in the top 50 take us up on that this year. And again, we're seeing not only the efficiency gains, but we're seeing the quality. Now, quality is a little harder to measure But one of the things they do is just look at last year and see what we verified or not, and run this against that data set and see what we say you should have verified or not, and looked at. And the results can be quite dramatic. So I think I think this is the future. I think this is how we change the industry and the way audit has been done historically, and it's through the use of these types of technologies that we see big quality gains. So that's been our biggest take up in usage at this point. Those more sophisticated, larger firms.
Thank you, Jeff. And the next question is around size of audit. So I guess that's a follow on from that question. So I'll throw that one to James. James, so what sort of audit sizes does the technology work best on?
Thanks, Greg. Yeah, that's a good question, and I know we've got a lot of people listening today from audit firms that are large and small across the world, and where we're really targeting is the mid-sized audit, the owner-managed businesses. In UK terms, really that looks like anything from a turnover of £100,000 up to £500 million typically. And the reason why we've sort of limited it to that scope is really around what we call our connectors, and this is our ability to extract data from specific types of clients' accounting packages. For the larger end of the market, the bigger audits generally with sort of the larger listed firms, they're using very customized ERP platforms, which we don't, due to the nature of the customization, we don't extract data from it. It's not something we can do at scale. However, we currently offer connectors for about 21, with a further 9, I believe, due to be built in 2020, ERP packages covering mainly the mid market. So that's the only limitation, and that really brings our focus in the UK to clients typically sort of top 30, top 40 UK firms is where we focus. So I hope that answers the question to the listener.
Yeah, thank you, James. And how do we we've got a question come through here from one of the listeners, and it's around other pieces of technology in the market, and it specifically names Inflow and MindBridge, and wants to know how we compare ourselves to them. Yeah, so do you want to kick it off, or should we throw it over to Jeff? Do you want to pick that one up?
Sure, I'll pick that one up. Those are both very good tools, and they're very focused on analysis of management accounts and anomaly detection within those accounts of what's going on, and do a nice job of presenting that visually back to the user. So I would never tell you they're not good tools, because they are good tools. Our focus is different from that. Our focus is on extraction of the data, standardizing the data, and comparing the data to third-party evidence, and presenting you with an auditor risk map. We are not trying to become the auditor, make any audit assertions around any of the management data. We believe that you understand your clients, and auditing can be a sometimes contentious activity, because you're by nature going in and looking at what others have done before you, and trying to make an assessment as to if this is accurate or not, to the best of your ability. We're trying to give you an answer with data and tool sets that make those questions easier to answer, and help you improve quality.
Great, thank you, Jeff, and thanks for the question. The next one is around what if my client doesn't want to upload data? So I presume, okay, that's quite a limited question, but I presume the meaning there is technologically speaking, they have a process that they like and they want to follow, and therefore this is a change to that normal way of handling things. So yeah, so what do we objection handling?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think interesting. We'll look back on this question in years to come and laugh that it was even a question.
Yeah.
that you know, digital processes will be so much of the norm, and that, you know, mandating the usage of this will be a no-brainer. However, now there may be clients who are sort of hesitant to want to share their data digitally. We do track very closely the ratio of the invites sent out to clients and those that then respond and upload, and we see that in the high 90%. So in the high 90s. So that's pleasing. So it's higher than you might think. And generally speaking, that can be accounted for because a digital process offers fewer disruptions to the client. You know, they one upload and every piece of information that the auditor needs is there. We obviously have a very secure environment, ISO 27001, SOC 2 Type 2 certified. We also have a help desk here as well that for your clients to use. So if they're having any difficulty, challenges, they have concerns about uploading, there's a number there, and that they come through as to the data share help desk, and we can answer any questions they've got and talk them through the upload process. And we also offer training to the audit teams as well in how to utilize this into the workflow, how to build, you know, confidence with the client that this is the, you know, great process to use, and that's really what we're trying to do is keep the client at the center of this, right? Because it is a hugely important tool for them, that they're getting the benefit of a far higher quality audit, that they're getting much more enriched, you know, enriched data. They are having a less intrusive and a faster process. So the upside to them is huge in looking to share, you know, agreeing to upload their data. So yeah, in all but the most sort of stuck in the mud organisation, we generally see that they're pretty comfortable in sharing uploaded data. Good question, thank you.
Thanks, James. So yeah, so I guess to wrap up, probably just a question from me for both of you then. So what do we think the year ahead looks like, or the next 1 or 2 years ahead look like? What sort of what would be your key thoughts? Is it everyone's got to jump on the technology bandwagon? Jeff, you know, have you got anything sort of top of mind that you think is absolute priorities for the next, you know, 12, 18, 24 months?
Yeah, I do, and thanks for the question, Greg. I mean, change is hard, whether it's personal or professional or both, and we've enjoyed many years as successful CPAs in this industry. That said, it's inevitable, and we've seen it in all of our lives where technology has dramatically changed how we interact with, you know, our customers and just interact day to day to do transactions. I think the key is to get started, and you have to get somebody internally in the firm at the partner level that is willing to be the champion and wants to look at this, and you're going to allow them some time. I've surveyed numerous partners at all level firms, and this is technology that is available to the largest firms, as you heard me mention earlier, but also to the smaller firms down to the individual that do you know, 50 audits or so a year type firm. And I think the key to that is when you start to allow a person to do that, you've got to surround them with supporting help. And what I mean by that is you kind of need to think about assigning some of their workload to others that need an additional challenge. I've come up with just my own analysis to really implement a technological change. The partner or the champion shouldn't have more than 15 to 20 audit clients that they're working on an annual basis, and that's just a very comes up every time average, if you will. Some of those will be very large clients, some will be very small clients, but if you're still trying to carry a load of 30 to 40 clients, audit clients, and implement a technological change within your firm, you're not going to have enough time. There's just not enough hours in the day. Most of the time, people don't think of CPAs of not doing their job or working hard. That's not it at all. So within the firm, you know, embrace that this is changing, embrace that we know we need to do something different. We're going to get some people assigned to it, and we're going to start. That's the key. Let's start. Take that first step.
Great. No, thank you, Jeff. Anything to add, James?
Yeah, I think, well, certainly 2020, I think we're going to see as many of these recommendations turn into, legislation. We saw Business Secretary Andrea Leadsom said she read the report and was keen to get things moving. So it's only a matter of time till we start seeing a lot of these recommendations become law, and then we see the formation of ARGA and some teeth behind it. So the more progressive firms are moving fast now to start making the changes that they need and getting certainly people in the right place, processes, budgets in place to be ready to address this. And we stand here ready to support our clients in any way that we can, and look forward to working with many of you. And I know we've not been able to get through all the questions today, but certainly gives us some material there for future webinars, I'm sure.
Absolutely. Thanks, James. So, all that's left to say for today then is thank you for joining us. I hope you found it useful or valuable. We will be doing many more hosted sessions and physical face-to-face sessions, in the UK and in the States this year. So look out for those. They're always free, and they always try and build a compelling lineup and sort of discussion. If you want to find out more information about Validus, please head over to the website www.validus.com. There's a /audit page. In terms of today's presentation, we'll be circulating the slides, and certainly the recording will be made available as well. So if you have any pieces of information you want to look back on, you can certainly do that, or you can share with colleagues as well. So thank you very much for your time and your attention today, and I hope you have a great day. Thanks also to our speakers, and I wish everybody sort of a happy rest of the week. So thanks a lot and take care. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.